The tow truck driver laughed as the rusted old Dodge rolled backward down the steel ramp, its front bumper hanging crooked like it had already given up on life years ago. Rain hammered the scrapyard in thick gray sheets while workers stood under the metal roof smoking cigarettes and watching the scene like vultures waiting for meat. The truck looked dead. Completely dead. Faded black paint. Cracked windshield. One headlight missing. Rust eating through the doors. The kind of vehicle people avoided making eye contact with at stoplights. And standing beside it was Mason Reed, 36 years old, exhausted, soaked from the rain, and holding the tiny hand of his 7-year-old daughter. $300, the scrapyard owner said. That's generous for this junk. Mason stared at the Dodge without speaking. His daughter Lily squeezed his hand tighter. Dad? He forced a smile. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. That truck was the only thing he had left from his father. The old Dodge had been sitting dead behind his trailer for nearly 8 years. No engine noise. No registration. No hope. Mason had spent every spare dollar trying to keep food on the table after his wife abandoned them 2 years earlier. Bills were piling up. The electricity company had already sent the final warning. $300 meant lights staying on. $300 meant Lily eating something besides instant noodles. So he nodded slowly. Do it. The scrapyard workers smirked as the Dodge got dragged toward the crusher line. One of them kicked the tire. Thing belongs in a graveyard. Another laughed. Looks like it already died there. Lily suddenly pulled away from Mason and ran toward the truck. Wait. Everyone turned. She climbed onto the rusted side step and wiped rainwater from the hood with her sleeve. My grandpa loved this truck, she shouted angrily. You can't crush it. The workers exchanged amused looks. The owner sighed impatiently. Kid, it's garbage. No, it's not. Mason walked over gently and picked her up while she fought tears. It's okay, sweetheart. But as he carried her away, an unfamiliar voice cut through the rain. Hold on. Everyone turned toward the entrance. A black luxury sedan had just pulled into the scrapyard. Then another. And another. 3 expensive cars rolled across the muddy ground before stopping beside the Dodge. Men in dark coats stepped out first. Then an older man emerged slowly from the middle car, holding an umbrella. The scrapyard owner instantly straightened his posture. Because everyone in the state knew who Arthur Calloway was. Billionaire collector. Auction legend. The man who once paid $11 million for a rare prototype Mustang. And right now, Arthur Calloway was staring directly at Mason's destroyed old Dodge. The old billionaire walked closer without saying a word. Rain dripped from the edge of his umbrella as he studied the hood carefully. Then his eyes widened. No, he whispered. One of his assistants stepped forward nervously. Sir? Arthur suddenly pointed at the engine bay. Open that hood. The scrapyard workers hesitated. Now! They rushed forward. The hood creaked upward with a horrible metallic groan. The engine inside looked incomplete and filthy. Most people would have seen nothing but rust and grease. But Arthur Calloway's breathing changed instantly. He stepped closer. Then closer. Then he reached trembling fingers toward a tiny section near the firewall. Hidden beneath decades of dirt was a factory stamp. Arthur stared at it for 5 silent seconds. Then he looked at Mason. Where did you get this truck? Mason blinked. It was my father's. How long have you owned it? Since he died. Arthur's face lost all color. You have absolutely no idea what this is, do you? The scrapyard owner laughed nervously. It's scrap metal, sir. Arthur slowly turned toward him. No, he said quietly. It's not. Silence swallowed the yard. Rain pounded harder. Arthur motioned one assistant forward immediately. Call Denver. Right now. Tell them I found one. The assistant froze. Sir, you mean? Yes. The man hurried away with his phone. Mason looked confused. Found what? Arthur kept staring at the factory stamp like he was looking at buried treasure. In 1970, he said slowly, Dodge secretly produced 6 experimental Hemi Challenger units for racing development before federal restrictions killed the project. The scrapyard workers stopped moving. Arthur continued. Only 2 were officially documented. He pointed at the hidden stamp. That marking shouldn't exist. Mason frowned. I don't understand. Arthur looked directly into his eyes. Your father owned one of the rarest American muscle cars ever built. The entire scrapyard went silent. One worker actually laughed because he thought it was a joke. But Arthur wasn't smiling. Neither were his assistants. The billionaire circled the truck carefully now, almost reverently. The widened rear frame, handmade welds, modified shock towers. His voice became excited. My God! The scrapyard owner swallowed hard. How much is something like that worth? Arthur answered without even looking at him. If authentic? He paused. Several $1,000,000. The cigarette fell from the worker's mouth. Mason stared blankly. What? Arthur looked at him again. Your father knew what he had. Mason shook his head immediately. No. No way. My dad worked construction his whole life. Arthur smiled faintly. That means nothing. These prototypes disappeared before the public ever learned they existed. Some employees hid them. Some were sold quietly through back channels. He touched the truck softly. Collectors have searched 50 years for the missing units. Lily looked up at Mason. Daddy, are we rich? Mason couldn't even breathe. The scrapyard owner suddenly interrupted. Well, technically. He cleared his throat awkwardly. You already agreed to sell it. Arthur's expression darkened instantly. Mason turned slowly. I didn't sign anything. The owner hesitated. Arthur stepped closer to him. You were about to crush a multi-million-dollar vehicle for $300. The man stammered defensively. How was I supposed to know? Arthur ignored him completely and faced Mason again. I want to buy it. The workers leaned closer. Mason still looked dazed. You said it could be worth millions. It could, Arthur agreed. If restoration confirms authenticity. So why would you buy it? Because I know exactly what it is. The billionaire removed his gloves calmly. I'll offer you $1 million today. The scrapyard owner nearly choked. Mason's eyes widened in disbelief. 1 million? Arthur nodded once. Right now? Lily screamed with excitement. But Mason didn't answer. Because suddenly something felt wrong. Very wrong. He looked back at the truck. Then at Arthur. If it's worth more than that. Arthur smiled slightly. It probably is. The rain continued falling around them. Mason's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Every problem in his life could disappear instantly with one signature. But then he remembered something. Years ago. His father sitting beside this exact truck late at night. Greasy hands. Tired face. Whispering one strange sentence. Never let anyone steal her cheap. At the time Mason thought the old man was talking emotionally. Now he wasn't so sure. Arthur noticed his hesitation. You're thinking wisely. The billionaire admitted. That's good. Mason narrowed his eyes. How much do you really think it's worth? Arthur didn't answer immediately. That silence told Mason everything. The billionaire finally said quietly. If the original racing components still exist, possibly 10 million. The scrapyard exploded with noise. Workers shouting. Phones coming out. One man started filming. The owner looked physically sick. Mason stepped backward slowly. $10 million. For this truck? Impossible. But Arthur suddenly asked something strange. Did your father ever mention a red notebook? Mason froze. Because he had. Once. Right before dying from lung disease. His father had grabbed Mason's wrist weakly from the hospital bed. Find the red notebook before anyone else does. Mason never found it. He thought the medication had confused him. Arthur noticed the change in his face instantly. He did mention it. Mason didn't answer. Arthur took a slow breath. The notebook may contain the original prototype documentation. Why do you care so much? Because automotive history disappears every year, Arthur said quietly. And because men have spent decades hunting these cars. A cold feeling crept through Mason's stomach. Men? Arthur's expression shifted. Then headlights suddenly appeared at the scrapyard entrance. 3 black SUVs rolled through the rain fast. Too fast. Arthur muttered under his breath. Oh no. The SUVs stopped hard beside the yard. Large men stepped out immediately wearing expensive jackets and hard expressions. The leader was tall, gray-haired, and furious. He locked eyes on the Dodge instantly. Then on Arthur. Well, the man said coldly. Looks like you found it first. Arthur's jaw tightened. Mason looked between them. Who is this? Arthur answered quietly. Victor Kane. Even the scrapyard owner recognized that name. Victor Kane wasn't just a collector. He was ruthless. The kind of billionaire rumored to destroy competitors financially for fun. Kane walked through the rain smiling slightly. You know, he said to Arthur, I've spent 22 years searching for this prototype. Arthur replied coldly. Then you should have looked harder. Kane ignored him and faced Mason instead. I'll offer $2 million. The scrapyard workers gasped again. Cash, Kane added immediately. Arthur stepped forward. Don't do this. Kane smiled wider. Why? Afraid I'll win again? The tension between them felt ancient. Dangerous. Mason held Lily closer now. Kane looked at the truck like a predator staring at prey. You have no idea what your father was involved in, Kane told Mason. Arthur snapped instantly. That's enough. But Kane continued. The prototype program disappeared because someone stole internal development vehicles before the federal shutdown. Mason frowned. You're saying my father stole this? No, Kane said calmly. I'm saying someone did. Arthur looked furious now. That story was disproven years ago. Was it? Kane replied. The rainwater dripped from the truck hood between them like ticking seconds. Then Kane suddenly looked at Mason again. There's something hidden inside this vehicle. Arthur's silence confirmed it. Kane smiled. You didn't tell him? Arthur said nothing. Mason's pulse quickened. Tell me what? Kane stepped closer. One of the missing prototypes reportedly contained experimental engineering records hidden somewhere inside the frame. Arthur finally spoke. Nothing was ever proven. But everyone believed it, Kane replied. Which is why men have spent 50 years hunting these cars. Lily whispered nervously. Daddy. Mason realized this wasn't about a car anymore. This was about something buried inside it. Something powerful enough for billionaires to fight over in a scrapyard during a thunderstorm. Kane suddenly raised his voice. 3 million. Arthur answered immediately. 5. The scrapyard owner almost collapsed. Mason stood frozen. $5 million. For a truck that didn't even run. Kane stared at Arthur carefully now. You already know it's inside. Arthur didn't blink. That was answer enough. Kane cursed softly. Then he turned back toward Mason. Listen carefully. If you sell to him, you'll never know the truth. Arthur countered instantly. If you sell to Kane, you'll regret it. The hatred between them felt real. Personal. Mason suddenly asked the question nobody expected. What exactly is hidden in the truck? Neither billionaire answered. Which terrified him more than anything. Then Lily spoke softly. Daddy. Everyone looked at her. My grandpa hid stuff under the seat. Silence. Arthur's eyes widened instantly. Kane moved first. Check the truck. Several men rushed forward simultaneously. Arthur's security blocked them. The scrapyard exploded into shouting. Mason pulled Lily back fast as men argued beside the Dodge. Then Arthur yelled. Stop! Everyone froze. The billionaire looked at Mason carefully. It's your truck. You check it. The rain softened slightly. Mason walked slowly toward the Dodge while every eye followed him. His hands shook as he opened the rusted driver door. The interior smelled ancient. Dust. Oil. Memories. He knelt beside the torn seat cushions and reached underneath carefully. Nothing. Then farther back. His fingers touched metal. A small hidden latch. Mason's heartbeat stopped. He pulled it. Click. A secret compartment opened beneath the seat. Inside was a red notebook. Exactly where Lily remembered. Nobody moved. Mason stared at it in disbelief. Arthur looked pale. Victor Kane looked furious. Slowly, Mason opened the notebook. Inside were handwritten engineering notes. Blueprint sketches. Prototype data. And one final folded paper tucked into the back. Mason unfolded it carefully. Then froze. Because it wasn't technical paperwork. It was a letter. Written by his father. Mason. If you're reading this, it means they finally found the car. Listen carefully. The men looking for this truck are dangerous. The prototype mattered because of what Dodge planned to build next. Your grandfather worked on the project before it was buried forever. People tried buying this car from me for years. Then threatening me. I kept refusing. Not because of money. Because some things should belong to history, not billionaires. If Arthur Calloway found this first, trust him. If Victor Kane found it first, run. Mason slowly lowered the letter. Kane's expression had completely changed. Cold. Sharp. Arthur stepped forward quietly. What else does it say? Mason looked up. It says my grandfather worked on the project. Arthur nodded slowly like pieces finally connected. Then Kane suddenly laughed. Touching family story? But his eyes had turned dangerous now. Unfortunately, that notebook belongs to the vehicle. Arthur immediately moved between them. No. It belongs to him. Kane's men stepped closer. So did Arthur's. The scrapyard became dead silent again. Mason realized something horrifying. This situation was about to become violent. And Lily was standing right beside him. Arthur saw it too. Then the billionaire did something unexpected. He removed a set of keys from his coat and handed them to Mason. Take my car. Mason blinked. What? Go. Now. Kane laughed. You think he's leaving? Arthur's voice hardened. If Kane gets that notebook, he'll bury everything inside it forever. Kane smiled darkly. Because some information destroys industries. Mason didn't fully understand. But he understood enough. His father had protected this secret his entire life. Now men were willing to fight over it in the rain. Arthur looked directly into Mason's eyes. Your father trusted me. How do you know? Arthur swallowed slowly. Because I knew him. Silence. What? Arthur looked at the old Dodge again. We worked together once. Mason stared at him in shock. He never mentioned you. He wouldn't. Arthur's voice grew quieter. Your father saved my life in 1978. Kane interrupted angrily. Enough nostalgia. Then one of Kane's men suddenly lunged toward the truck. Arthur's security reacted instantly. Chaos exploded. Shouting. Bodies slamming into mud. Lily screamed. Arthur grabbed Mason violently. Go! Mason didn't hesitate anymore. He grabbed the notebook, picked up Lily, and sprinted toward Arthur's luxury sedan while men fought behind them in the rain beside the legendary Dodge. And as the engine roared to life, Mason looked once more through the windshield. The rusted old Dodge sat alone under flashing scrapyard lights. No longer junk. No longer forgotten. But worth killing for.